So we had a hold your applause policy at Wesley Theological Seminary for graduation. Seminary, our graduation was held in the National Cathedral. It's a cavernous, beautiful cavernous building. 3,000 or so would gather and the sound would be amplified in that building. But here's the problem. The graduates who were student pastors during seminary brought school bus loads of their parishioners to the graduation. They came from the nooks and crannies of West Virginia and Maryland and central Pennsylvania. These busloads of people were loyal fans. We faculty called them groupies. They had helped to get their pastors through school, and they were going to celebrate. So normal practice was somebody got their diploma, came across the stage, registrar read the name, president shook their hand, gave them a certificate, they quietly exit. When a student pastor came across the stage, the busloads of people would hoop and holler, and they'd whistle with that two-finger whistle. It makes a great sound in a cathedral. A two-finger whistle. Keep that in mind sometime. And the whole thing was disrupted. And they'd break out in cheers. Yay, Pastor Jen! Whoops, did I just give away one of those? And the registrar would frown, and the congregation would chuckle, and then somebody else who wasn't a student pastor would come across, and they'd quietly give their diploma, and they'd slink off, and then a student pastor would come, and it would start all over again. So we had our hold your applause policy. We always read it before the service started, and they always ignored it as the service went on. I think Jesus had a feel for joyful occasions where you can't repress the applause. As they enter Jerusalem on that Palm Sunday, the crowd gathers along a parade route, and they hoop and they holler, and they use palm branches, and they shout Hosanna, and probably, I think, some of them used a two-finger whistle as he went by. And when the critics said to Jesus, you got to tone it down because the Romans are going to see this and they're going to come down on us, Jesus said, I tell you, if they were quiet, the stones themselves would lift up their praise. It's as if God has woven into the fabric of the universe a sense of joy, just waiting to be unlocked. I think of that phrase from Isaiah 55, the trees of the hill will clap their hands. Can't help but doing it. We've been going through the Sermon on the Mount, this series, and we've talked about it in framework of the applause of God. The ones that we've looked at are the first 6 so far. We finished this morning with the last 2. Jesus had a sense of God's appreciation for people that other people overlook. And there's a sense that the poor in spirit, the mourning, the meek, the merciful, all the people you dismiss, all the people that you would put aside, Jesus says God appreciates them. And when he says they're blessed, he means it present tense, future tense. Easy to get the future tense. One day God will reverse their fortunes and we'll finally realize that the merciful will inherit the earth. But Jesus also means that even now, somehow, God applauds these people. And I've tried to find images in Scripture for what he might mean. And I keep coming back to that opening scene in Job. Do you remember in Job that Satan is still just one of the angels? And he's going to and from the earth, wreaking havoc. And God catches up with him and said, have you seen my child Job? And this is this image of God being proud for one of his and applauding one of his own. Have you seen that? Can you appreciate that? Today we come to the last 2 Beatitudes. Blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are those who try to bring estranged parties together. And blessed are those persecuted for the sake of righteousness, who endure difficult circumstances to carry out a great mission. Jesus came to make friends of God and human. Jesus came to put his life on the line, to be crucified, to bring about the salvation of the world. I think you could say that Jesus' ministry is captured in those first 6. So much of what he did had to do with poor in spirit, those who mourn and those who meek, and trying to bring to them the promises that you will inherit the land, you will be seen by God, and you will see God. He spent his ministry in those 6. He spent his mission in the last two. So there's a turning point in the Gospels where Jesus sets his face to Jerusalem and things start to be grim and be serious. And the Jesus who's used to the applause of God, he gets baptized, a voice in the cloud, this is my son, this is my beloved son. There's voices from God along the way. He heals people, and the people who are healed, what do? They dance, they sing, they laugh, and there's the crowd who hangs on his word and just can't seem to get enough of what he has to say. God applauds Jesus through much of his ministry, and then there comes this serious point. He's not hearing the voice from the cloud, and there aren't time for those miracles. And this crowd that used to cheer for him starts to get a little edgy, and you had the feeling that maybe they could turn into a mob quickly. No more voices from heaven, no more sense that God is applauding. And I try to imagine the tenacity of the anxiousness of that moment. And so I love the Transfiguration story that we come up with. It's on this particular Sunday, the last Sunday before we enter Lent. I love it because it's the story of God's respite gift to Jesus in his journey on the cross. Respite, a short period of rest or relief from something difficult or unpleasant. A short period of rest or relief from something difficult or unpleasant. This is a painter from the 1685, Giordano, and his Transfiguration. And what I like about it is it lifts up several of the elements of what is happening here that is providing a respite of Jesus on his journey to the cross. First off, Jesus is taken out of the journey itself. He goes up to a high mountain. He brings along his 3 chosen disciples, and there they are above it all for a little bit. And then Jesus is bathed in light. Giordano was a painter who knew how to make light seem to come out of the background, so that whatever's going on with Jesus just floods over everybody else. And so the light that he basks in that lifts him up, however he's feeling about the mission, now he's flooded with light. And Moses and Elijah appear. Moses is the one with the tablet, of course. And they're from the other side, and they represent the work of God in salvation history. And they're his peers, and he's going to have a preview with them. After it's over, the hard part, you will be with them. These will be your friends. Sit around heaven and talk and catch up. And above all else, there's a voice now in the cloud that comes one more time. He hasn't heard it for a while, maybe weeks, maybe months, possibly years. The voice clearly says to everybody there, this is my son, this is my beloved, I am well pleased. So you get the interruption of the narrative for that special gift of God, brings him to a place, affirms who he is, affirms his importance. Now, it's only a respite. It's not permanent. Peter doesn't get that. Peter is a doer. Please, can we go to Hobart, get the lumber, build a tabernacle of some sort, and we can settle down here. Eventually, we can charge admission. I want to make this thing permanent. I want to say this is the end of it. It can't be the end of it. He's not done with his work. He's going to go back down from the mountain. He's going to go toward Jerusalem. He's going to provoke the crucifixion that ends his life. But it's a respite. It's God giving to Jesus the affirmation that he will need as the chosen one to finish his hard work. I want to talk for a little bit about a word to the church on being God's respite to one another. One of my favorite poets is William Stafford, and he has a poem called My Hands. And it's a celebration of the power of hands to give or withhold blessing. And he used the illustration, he's sitting at a concert, and the concert's over, and everybody's applauding, but he thought the conference stank. And so, you know what? He puts his hands on his balcony, and he's not going to clap. You can't make me. He said, these are my hands. I'm in control. If I don't want to affirm it, I'm not going to. Or somebody comes toward him, and he doesn't particularly like her, and she holds out her hand to shake. He puts his hand in the pocket. You can't make me. Take my hand out and shake your hand. Now, I know William Stafford enough to know he knows both sides of the script. He knows what power that is to give or hold blessing. He knows how devastating it is to have the blessing withheld. By this hand, I can make you feel so much better. By this hand, withheld, I can make you feel so much worse. The world is around us is filled with what I would call scorned people. They put out their best, and the audience just sat there and never clapped. They put themselves forward, and the person took their hand back. Paul writes to the little church of Thessalonica, and he says, you've got some of those people in there, so I want you to do this. I want you to encourage one another and build each other up. Translation, I want you to clap for one another, for heaven's sake. I want you to support them and affirm them. John Wesley, in a different vein, could use the same thing in his general rules, which were, don't hurt anybody. Do all the good you can. Start with the household of faith and go outward from there, building up, encouraging. We are called to be God's respite for one another, to provide that transformation, which is the transfiguration played out in our everyday life that gives strength to people in difficult and unpleasant situations. One more time, the Peggy Deck story. And I promise not to tell this story ever again in this church or in 2026. So Peggy Deck is this wonderful person in her 80s, the time I was serving in Wesley Williamsport. Short little lady who saw the best in everybody and always shared what she saw with them. Every time she came out of church, there was something she found in the sermon that would lift me up. Always looked forward that she was there. Always felt bad when she wasn't. There came the Sunday I preached the super dud sermon. I was preaching from the book of Daniel, and it just wouldn't come together. Ilya Malinin, quad God, he had nothing on me that day. In the greeting line afterwards, I was thinking, I'll be lucky if Peggy Deck just gives me a silent pass. So here she comes. She takes my hand firmly, looked up into my eyes, said, Dr. Lou, I just love the way you pronounce Nebuchadnezzar. Bless your memory, Peggy. I love that you loved it. How kind of God to take Jesus out of the moment where he nears the end to a mountain, to bask him in light, to surround him with his friends, to give him a preview of conversations with his peers in the kingdom, and most of all, to remind him, whatever comes next, you are my son, you are beloved, and I am well pleased with you.